School bus driver discovers why boy feels pain when sitting and decides to call the police. Robert Thompson adjusted the rear-view mirror of the school bus while once again observing the scene that had been troubling him for weeks. The boy, around 12 years old, climbed the steps with exaggerated care, as if every movement caused discomfort. Tyler Johnson, that was the boy's name. Robert knew by heart the names of all 53 students he transported daily through the city of Portland, but this boy sparked a special concern. "Good morning, Mr. Robert," murmured Tyler, as he always did, but this time his voice sounded shakier than usual. "Good morning, son. Everything all right with you?" Tyler just nodded and walked down the aisle, gripping the seat backs tightly. Robert noticed how he avoided sitting fully, perching only on the edge of the seat, as if something were deeply bothering him. In his 22 years of driving a school bus, Robert had learned to read the signals children gave off. He knew when they were sad, scared, sick, or just up to mischief. But with Tyler, it was different. There was something deeper, something that left him unsettled. The bus continued down the main street, stopping at each pickup point to collect more students. The children chatted excitedly, but Tyler remained quiet, staring out the window with a distant expression. Robert watched him in the rearview mirror, noticing how the boy fidgeted constantly, trying to find a comfortable position. "Tyler, did you hurt your back?" asked a classmate, noticing his discomfort. "No, I'm fine," he replied quickly, but his pained expression said otherwise. Robert decided to pay closer attention. In the following days, he began making mental notes about the boy's behavior. Tyler always boarded the bus with the same difficulty, always avoided sitting fully, and always carried an exhaustion that wasn't normal for a child his age. That Thursday, something happened that confirmed Robert's suspicions. It was pouring rain, and when Tyler boarded the bus, he was soaked and shivering. He had no umbrella or raincoat. "Son, you're soaked to the bone," Robert exclaimed, concerned. "Sorry, Mr. Robert, I'll dry off on the seat." No, there's a towel up here. Come here." Tyler walked to the front of the bus, but when Robert handed him the towel, the boy jerked suddenly to take it and let out a low groan of pain, clutching his back. "What was that, son? Are you in pain?" "It's nothing, Mr. Robert. I just slept funny last night." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Robert wasn't convinced by the explanation. During the ride, he kept watching Tyler in the rearview mirror. The boy was more restless than usual, shifting positions every few minutes, as if he couldn't get comfortable. When they arrived at school, Robert made a decision. As soon as all the students had exited, he parked the bus and sought out the school counselor, Mrs. Patricia Wilson, a woman in her 60s who knew all the students well. "Mrs. Patricia, can I speak with you for a minute?" "Of course, Robert, what is it?" "It's about Tyler Johnson, from 7th grade. I've noticed he's been acting very strange lately." Patricia adjusted her glasses and looked at Robert carefully. "Strange how?" "He seems to be in pain all the time. He can't sit properly, walks hunched over, and looks like he hasn't slept well in weeks." Now that you mention it, his teacher said he's been dozing off a lot in class. She thought it was just teenage laziness. "Mrs. Wilson, I've worked with children for over 20 years. This isn't laziness. That boy is suffering from something." The coordinator was thoughtful for a few seconds. "I'll talk to the teacher and observe more closely. If necessary, we'll call the parents for a conversation." Robert returned to the bus but couldn't get Tyler out of his head. During the afternoon route back to the students' homes, he paid even closer attention to the boy. Tyler was one of the last to get off, and when his turn came, Robert decided to try a different approach. "Tyler, wait just a minute." The boy stopped at the bus door, looking at Robert with some apprehension. "Yes, Mr. Thompson." "Son, you know you can talk to me, right? If something's bothering you..." "Nothing's wrong, Mr. Thompson. Everything's fine." "Okay, but if you need anything, you can talk to me, all right?" Tyler nodded and stepped off the bus. Robert watched him walk toward a yellow house at the end of the street. He noticed that even while walking, the boy held himself strangely, as if trying to protect his back. That night, Robert talked to his wife, Margaret, about his concerns. "Margaret, there's a boy on the bus who's got me worried." "What do you think it could be?" "I don't know. He seems to be in constant pain. Can't sit right, walks hunched over, looks like he isn't sleeping well." "Have you talked to the school?" "Yes, but I think I need to do more. That boy is suffering. I'm sure of it." Margaret, who had been a teacher for 30 years before retiring, knew her husband had a sharp instinct for spotting when a child was in trouble. "Then keep watching and taking notes. If necessary, we'll need concrete proof." On Friday, Robert decided to arrive a little earlier at Tyler's stop. He wanted to observe the boy before he got on the bus. What he saw worried him even more. Tyler walked out of the house very slowly, carrying his backpack as if it weighed a ton. With every step, he winced slightly in pain. When he saw the bus approaching, he tried to walk faster but was clearly struggling. "Good morning, Tyler." "Good morning, Mr. Thompson." This time, Robert paid close attention to how the boy climbed the steps. Tyler gripped the handrail tightly and took one step at a time, pausing between them as if gathering strength. During the ride, Robert noticed Tyler barely spoke to his classmates, unusual for him, as he'd always been a sociable boy. He was clearly exhausted. When they arrived at school, Robert gathered his courage and decided to approach Tyler more directly. "Tyler, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Have you been sleeping well at home?" The boy hesitated before answering. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you look very tired, son, and it seems like your back hurts." I sometimes have trouble sleeping." "Why?" Tyler glanced around, making sure no other kids were listening. "It's just, my room hasn't been very comfortable lately." "What do you mean?" "My stepmom had a baby a few months ago, and she needed to use my room for other things. Now I sleep somewhere else." "Where else?" "In the garage." Robert's heart raced. A child sleeping in the garage. That couldn't be right. "In the garage? What do you mean?" "It's temporary," Tyler said quickly, as if repeating something he'd heard many times. "Until they get the house more organized." "How long have you been sleeping there?" About 4 months." Robert was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. 4 months was too long for something temporary. "And how do you sleep there? Do you have a bed?" Tyler looked down. "There's a mattress on the floor." Robert realized there was more to this story, but decided not to push further for now. He didn't want to scare the boy. "All right, son. If you ever need to talk about anything, you can count on me, okay?" "Okay, thank you, Mr. Robert." When Tyler got off the bus, Robert immediately went to find Mrs. Patricia again. "Mrs. Patricia, I need to speak with you urgently." "What is it, Robert?" "It's about Tyler. I managed to talk to him today, and the situation is worse than I thought." Robert told the coordinator about his conversation with the boy. Patricia looked visibly worried. "He's been sleeping in the garage for 4 months?" "That's what he told me. And look at the state he's in, he can't even sit properly." "I'll call his parents for a meeting on Monday. This can't go on like this." "Mrs. Patricia, with all due respect, but I think a meeting might not be enough. If a family is making a child sleep in the garage, they'll just come up with some excuse." "What do you suggest?" "I think we need more information before confronting the parents. How about I try talking to Tyler more next week?" Patricia agreed with Robert's suggestion. Over the weekend, he couldn't stop thinking about the boy. How could a child be sleeping in a garage for so long without anyone noticing? By Monday, Robert was determined to find out more details. When Tyler got on the bus, he looked even worse than the week before. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes and moved as if every motion hurt. "Tyler, did you have a good weekend?" "Sort of." "Do anything fun?" "Not really. Stayed home most of the time." "How was sleeping in the garage? Wasn't it too cold?" Tyler looked at Robert in surprise, clearly not expecting him to remember their earlier conversation. "It was a little cold." "Do you have enough blankets?" "I have 1 blanket. Sometimes I put a jacket over me too." "And the mattress, is it comfortable?" Tyler hesitated before answering. "Actually, there's no mattress. I just sleep with the blanket right on the floor. Robert felt anger rising inside him. A 12-year-old boy sleeping on the cold garage floor for months, and no one had noticed. On the concrete floor. Yeah, but it's not so bad. It's just until my stepmom gets things sorted out. And does your dad know you're sleeping there? He travels a lot for work, isn't home much. But when he is home, does he know where you sleep? Tyler was silent for a few seconds. My stepmom told him I prefer sleeping in the garage because it's quieter. And is that true? Do you prefer it? Tyler started to speak, but stopped. I don't want to cause trouble for anyone. Robert realized the boy was clearly lying to protect someone, probably out of fear. Son, you won't cause any trouble. I'm just worried about you. I know, Mr. Robert. You're nice, but it's really okay. When they arrived at school, Robert watched Tyler get off the bus. The boy moved slowly, clearly in pain, and walked hunched toward the school gate. Robert decided he needed more information. During recess, he asked to speak with Tyler's teacher, Mrs. Jennifer, a 55-year-old woman who taught English. Mrs. Jennifer, can I talk to you about Tyler Johnson? Of course. What's wrong? Have you noticed anything unusual about his behavior lately? Now that you mention it, yes. He's been falling asleep in class a lot, especially after lunch, and he always seems tired. Anything else? He also complains about back pain often. The other day, he asked to stand for the whole class because he said he couldn't sit down. Did you ever ask what was going on? I did, but he said everything was fine. I thought it was just a teenage phase. Mrs. Jennifer, I found out he's been sleeping on the concrete floor in his garage for months. The teacher was shocked. On the garage floor? Why? According to him, his stepmother needed to use his room for other things after she had a baby. That can't be right. A child shouldn't sleep on a garage floor. That's exactly what I thought. I believe we need to take action. The teacher agreed to keep a closer eye on Tyler during class and report anything unusual. On the way home that afternoon, Robert decided to try a different approach with Tyler. Son, can I ask you something about your family? Sure. Your stepmother, is she kind to you? Tyler took a while to answer. She's really busy with the baby. I see. And before the baby was born, how was it? It was different. Different how? Before, she was more attentive to me. After the baby was born, she said I was old enough to take care of myself. And your father? When he's home, how does he treat you? My dad's nice, but he's always tired from work, so we don't talk much. Tyler, can I ask you something directly? Go ahead. Do you feel like anyone in your house cares about your well-being? The boy fell silent for a long time. Robert glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Tyler's eyes welling up. Sometimes I feel like I'm a burden. What do you mean? Like when I complained about my back hurting from the garage floor, my stepmother said I was being dramatic, that I just needed to get used to it. And your father? Did you talk to him about it? I tried once, but my stepmother said he was too stressed from work and I shouldn't bother him with nonsense. Robert felt anger rising inside him. How could a woman treat a child like this? Tyler, sleeping on a concrete floor isn't nonsense. It can cause serious health problems. I know it hurts, but my stepmother said it's only temporary. How many months has she been saying that? Since it started, so about 4 months. And do you really believe it's temporary? Tyler lowered his head. Actually, no. I think she turned my room into a home office. I saw her buying office furniture last week. Robert grew even more furious. The stepmother had lied to the boy, making him believe it was temporary when she'd permanently turned his room into an office. Tyler, do you have any other relatives, grandparents, uncles? I have my grandma, my dad's mum, but I haven't seen her in a while. Why? My stepmother doesn't like her much, says she's too nosy. Would you like to see your grandma? I'd love to. She was always really sweet to me. Do you have her phone number? No, but I know where she lives. Robert was starting to form a plan. Maybe Tyler's grandmother could help. Son, would you like me to try reaching out to your grandma? Tyler looked at Robert with a mix of hope and fear. You do that? But what if my stepmother gets mad? Tyler, you're a child. You deserve a safe, comfortable place to sleep. Your stepmother should already be mad at herself for letting you sleep on the floor for months. But what if she kicks my dad out because of me? Son, that wouldn't be your fault. You're not asking for too much. Just a decent place to sleep. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Tyler was thoughtful for a few minutes. If you could talk to my grandma, maybe she can talk to my father when he gets back from his trip. When is your father coming back? On Thursday. Perfect. I'll try to reach your grandmother before then. What's her full name? Elizabeth Johnson. She lives in Oakwood Heights near the church. Robert knew the area. It was an old neighborhood in Portland where many traditional families had lived for decades. That night, Robert talked to his wife about the plan. Margaret, I need to find this boy's grandmother. Do you think she can help? I'm sure of it. If she's really as loving toward her grandson as he says, she'll be horrified when she learns about the situation. And how will you find her? I'll take a walk around Oakwood Heights tomorrow after work. It's a small neighborhood. Someone must know Elizabeth Johnson. The next day, Robert was more determined than ever. During the morning ride, he noticed Tyler was even worse off. The boy dragged himself onto the bus and let out a quiet groan of pain as he sat down. Tyler, are you okay? I'm fine, Mr. Robert. It's just, it rained yesterday and water got into the garage. The floor was wet, and I ended up sleeping on the damp ground. On the damp ground? Did you get sick? I'm a little congested, but it's nothing serious. Robert glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Tyler was clearly coming down with something. His nose was red, and he coughed occasionally. Son, do you need medicine? My stepmother said it's just a mild cold, that it'll go away on its own. And if it doesn't? Have you seen a doctor? No. My stepmother doesn't like wasting money on doctors for silly things. Robert was growing angrier by the minute at Tyler's stepmother. How could a woman be so heartless toward a child? When they arrived at school, Robert immediately went to find Mrs. Patricia. Mrs. Patricia, Tyler's situation is getting worse. What happened? It rained yesterday and water leaked into the garage where he sleeps. He spent the night on the wet floor and now he's sick. Oh my God, that's unacceptable. And when I asked if he'd seen a doctor, he said his stepmother doesn't like spending money on silly things. Robert, I think it's time we took stronger action. I'll call his father today. Mrs. Patricia, his father is traveling and won't be back until Thursday. Besides, I get the feeling he doesn't know the real situation with his son. What do you mean? From what I understand, the stepmother told him Tyler prefers sleeping in the garage because it's quieter. You think his father doesn't know he's sleeping on the floor? I'm sure he doesn't, and I also doubt he knows she turned the boy's room into a permanent office. Patricia grew thoughtful. What do you suggest then? I'm trying to track down his paternal grandmother. Tyler said she's always been very loving toward him, but his stepmother stopped allowing visits because she thought she was nosy. That's a good idea. If you find her, let me know. We can arrange a meeting with her before speaking to the parents. After work, Robert went straight to Oakwood Heights. He started by asking at the local church if anyone knew Elizabeth Johnson. Elizabeth Johnson? Said the priest, an elderly man with white hair. Yes, I know her. She comes here every Thursday for Mass. She's a very devout woman. Do you know where she lives? She lives on the back street, in the blue house with the garden out front. Why are you looking for her? It's about her grandson, Tyler. I'm his school bus driver and I'm worried about his situation. The priest looked concerned. Did something happen to Tyler? It's a long story, Father. I'd rather speak to his grandmother first. I understand. Mrs. Elizabeth is a good woman. I'm sure she'll want to help her grandson. Robert easily found the blue house with the garden. It was a simple but well-kept home, with colorful flowers out front. He took a deep breath before knocking on the door. A woman around 65 years old opened the door. She had graying hair tied in a bun and kind eyes. Good afternoon. Are you Elizabeth Johnson? Yes, I am. Can I help you? My name is Robert Thompson. I'm the school bus driver for your grandson, Tyler. Elizabeth's face lit up at the mention of her grandson's name. Tyler, how is he? It's been so long since I've seen him. That's exactly what I need to talk to you about. May I come in? Elizabeth invited him inside. The house was cozy, filled with family photos on the walls. Robert noticed several pictures of Tyler as a child, smiling next to his grandmother. Can I offer you some coffee? Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I'd love some. While Elizabeth prepared the coffee, Robert studied the photos of Tyler. It was clear how much his grandmother adored him. Mrs. Johnson, when was the last time you saw Tyler? Almost a year ago. After my son married Jessica, the visits became rare. She always makes excuses to keep him from seeing me. Have you tried visiting him? A few times, but Jessica always said it wasn't a good time, that Tyler was busy with school or sick or something else. Mrs. Johnson, I need to tell you what's happening with your grandson. Elizabeth sat in the chair across from Robert, clearly worried. What is it? Did something happen? Robert shared everything he had discovered about Tyler's situation. Elizabeth grew increasingly horrified as she listened. My grandson has been sleeping on the floor of a garage for 4 months. Yes, Mrs. Johnson. And yesterday it rained. Water got in, and he spent the night on the wet floor. Now he has a cold. Does my son know about this? From what I understand, Jessica told him Tyler prefers sleeping in the garage because it's quieter. That's a lie. Tyler has always been a child who loved the comfort of his own room. He'd never choose to sleep in a garage. That's what I thought. Do you have your son's phone number? I do, but he's away on business. He won't be back until Thursday. Mrs. Johnson, I think it's time for you to step in. Your grandson is suffering. Elizabeth fell silent for a few minutes, clearly processing everything. Tyler has always been the light of my life. When my daughter-in-law started making visits difficult, I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it was this bad. Would you be willing to come with me to the school tomorrow to talk to the principal? Of course. And I also want to speak to Jessica in person. Mrs. Johnson, maybe it's best to talk to the school first, and then decide how to approach the parents. You're right, I don't want to make things worse for Tyler. Exactly. We need to be careful, but we need to act fast. That boy can't keep sleeping in those conditions. That night, Robert barely slept, thinking about Tyler. The next morning, when the boy got on the bus, he was clearly worse. He coughed constantly and seemed feverish. Tyler, do you have a fever? Maybe a little. Did you take any medicine? My stepmom said it wasn't necessary, that I just needed rest. Rest? How can you rest sleeping on a wet garage floor? Tyler didn't answer, but Robert could see in his eyes that the boy was starting to realize his situation wasn't normal. Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something? Of course, son. Do you think it's not normal for a kid to sleep in a garage? Tyler, no, it's not. A child needs a proper room, a comfortable bed, a clean and dry space. I always thought it was weird, but my stepmom said I was being spoiled. That when she was a kid, she slept in worse conditions. Son, even if that were true, it's no excuse to treat you badly today. You deserve a decent place to sleep. Sometimes I dream I'm in my old room. It was small, but it had my bed, my toys, my clothes neatly arranged. What happened to your things when your stepmother turned your room into an office? She packed everything into a box in the attic. Said she'd organize it later, but she never did. And your clothes? They ended up in a bag in the garage, just like me. Robert Thompson grew angrier by the minute. How could a woman be so cruel to a child? When they arrived at school, Robert was waiting for Elizabeth Johnson at the gate. Tyler's grandmother was visibly anxious to see her grandson. When Tyler stepped off the bus and spotted her, his face lit up for the first time in weeks. "Grandma Elizabeth," he shouted, running to hug her. "My dear grandson, I've missed you so much." Robert watched the reunion with emotion. It was clear there was deep love between them. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk to your school about you, sweetheart." "About me? Why?" Elizabeth glanced at Robert, who nodded, confirming it was time to talk to Tyler. "Son, Mr. Thompson told me where you've been sleeping. This can't go on." Tyler lowered his head, clearly ashamed. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't want anyone to know." "There's nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. You're a child. This isn't your fault." "But what if my stepmom gets mad that I told?" "She should be mad at herself for allowing this," Elizabeth said firmly. Robert stepped closer. "Tyler, your grandmother is staying at school today so we can talk to the counselor. Is that okay?" "Are you going to call my dad?" "We will, but only to fix this. No one wants to hurt you." "Okay, I trust you and Grandma." After Tyler went inside, Robert and Elizabeth headed to the counselor's office. Patricia Wilson was visibly moved upon meeting Tyler's grandmother. "Mrs. Johnson, it's so nice to meet you. Robert told me you've been kept from Tyler's life." "Unfortunately, yes. My daughter-in-law always makes excuses so I can't see my grandson." "Now we understand why," Robert said. "She didn't want anyone finding out how she was treating him." "Mrs. Wilson, what can we do to help my grandson?" "First, we need to document everything. Robert, can you write a detailed report of your observations?" "Of course, I've already started taking notes at home." "Second, we need to call Tyler's father for an urgent meeting. He needs to know the truth." "My son gets back from his trip tonight," Elizabeth said. "I can call him and ask him to come tomorrow morning." "Perfect. And third, if necessary, we can involve child services to protect Tyler." "Do you think it'll come to that?" Elizabeth asked worriedly. "I hope not," Patricia replied. "If his father truly didn't know and takes action, we can resolve this as a family." "And if he doesn't," Robert asked, "then we'll involve the authorities. We can't let a child keep living in unfit conditions." That afternoon, Elizabeth called her son and scheduled the meeting for the next morning. She didn't share details over the phone, only that it was urgent and about Tyler. The next morning, Robert arrived early to meet Elizabeth before the meeting. Tyler boarded the bus, clearly nervous. "Mr. Thompson, is my dad coming to school today?" "Yes, son. Your grandmother spoke to him yesterday." "Was he mad?" "No, he was worried. He wants to understand what's happening." "What if he decides it's too much trouble and sends me to live with Grandma?" Elizabeth, who was sitting nearby, replied, "My grandson, it would be a pleasure to have you at home. But the best thing is for you to live with your father, in an environment where you're treated with kindness and respect." When they arrived at the school, Tyler's father, Richard Johnson, was already waiting in the office. He was a man around 40 years old, dressed in a suit, clearly coming straight from the airport. "Dad!" Tyler shouted, running to hug his father. "Hi, son. How are you?" "I'm okay." Richard noticed his son looked tired and thinner than when he had left 2 weeks earlier. "Have you lost weight?" "A little." "And that cough?" "It's just a cold." Richard looked at Robert and Elizabeth curiously. "Mom, what's going on? Your call yesterday left me worried." "Richard, we need to talk about Tyler's situation. Let's go to the principal's office." In the office, Mrs. Patricia began the meeting by introducing everyone present. "Mr. Richard, the driver Robert has noticed some concerning things about Tyler over the past few weeks." "What kind of things?" Robert started recounting his observations. Tyler's difficulty sitting, his constant fatigue, the back pain. "But Jessica told me he was fine," said Richard, confused. "Mr. Richard," Robert continued, "I managed to talk to Tyler about where he's been sleeping." "What do you mean, where he's been sleeping?" "He sleeps in his room." "Actually, no. Tyler has been sleeping in the garage for 4 months." Richard fell silent for a few seconds, clearly processing the information. "In the garage? What do you mean, in the garage?" "On the garage floor, Dad," Tyler said quietly. "Ever since you and Jessica had the baby." "But Jessica told me you were sleeping in the garage because you wanted to, because it was quieter for studying." "That's not true, Dad. She turned my room into an office and told me to sleep in the garage." Richard looked visibly shocked. "You've been sleeping on the concrete floor for 4 months?" "Yes, Dad. And yesterday it rained and water came in. That's why I have a cold." "My God!" Richard stood up from his chair, clearly upset. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Jessica said you were really stressed with work. and that I shouldn't bother you with nonsense. Nonsense? Son, you sleeping decently isn't nonsense. Elizabeth spoke up. Richard, I need to tell you that I tried to visit Tyler several times over the past few months, but Jessica always made excuses. What kind of excuses? That he was sick or studying, or that you were going out. Now I understand she didn't want me to find out. Richard ran his hands through his hair, clearly trying to process everything. Mrs. Patricia, are you all sure this is happening? Mr. Richard, may I call her here so we can all talk together? Yes, please. I want to hear what she has to say about this. Mrs. Patricia called Jessica and asked her to come to the school urgently. She only said it was about Tyler, without giving details. 40 minutes later, Jessica arrived at the school. She was a woman around 35, well put together but with an irritated expression. What's going on here? Why is everyone gathered? She asked as she entered the room. Jessica, Richard said, I need you to explain to me where Tyler has been sleeping. What do you mean where he's been sleeping? He sleeps where he always has. That's not true, Tyler said. You told me to sleep in the garage months ago. Jessica looked around the room, clearly realizing she'd been found out. Tyler, it's not like that. Then what is it like? Richard asked, his voice firmer. Richard, after Sophia was born, I needed to turn his room into a temporary office. It's just until we organize the house better. Temporarily? For 4 months? Elizabeth asked. Mrs. Elizabeth, with all due respect, this isn't your business. It is my business when it involves my grandson. Richard stood up. Jessica, you told me Tyler was sleeping in the garage because he wanted to. He got used to it there. On the concrete floor? Asked Robert. There's a mattress there. There is no mattress, said Tyler. I sleep right on the floor with a blanket. Richard turned red with anger. Jessica, how could you do this to my son? Richard, you don't understand. With the baby, we need more space, and his room was the most suitable for the office. And why didn't you tell me the truth? Why lie and say he wanted to sleep there? Because I knew you'd make a big deal out of anything. A big deal. My son sleeping on the floor is a big deal. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The argument was heating up. Mrs. Patricia decided to step in. Everyone, let's try to resolve this civilly, thinking about Tyler's well-being. You're right, said Richard, trying to calm down. Jessica, no matter the reasons, my son can't keep sleeping in the garage. But Richard, where is he supposed to sleep then? The room is taken up by my office. Your office? Asked Elizabeth indignantly. Is it more important than your stepson's room? I need to work to help with the household bills. And what kind of work needs an entire room? Asked Robert. I do online sales. I need space for the products. Richard stared at Jessica in disbelief. You turned my son's room into a storage space for online sales. It's not just storage, Richard. It's a professional office. Jessica, do you have any idea how this has affected Tyler's health? Asked Mrs. Patricia. He's exaggerating. Teenagers love to make a fuss. Exaggerating, said Robert. The boy has constant back pain, can't sleep properly, is losing weight. And he got sick because he slept on the wet floor when it rained, added Elizabeth. That only happened once. Jessica defended herself. Once is once too many, Richard shouted. Tyler, who had stayed quiet the whole time, finally spoke up. Dad, can I go live with Grandma? Richard looked at his son with teary eyes. Son, do you want to live with your grandmother because you don't want to live with me? It's not that, Dad. I want to live with you. But I want a place to sleep. I want to use the bathroom without asking permission. I want to eat when I'm hungry. What do you mean asking permission to use the bathroom? Asked Richard. Jessica turned my bathroom into storage too. Now I can only use the guest bathroom, and she doesn't like it when I use it after 8 at night. Richard looked at Jessica with disgust. You're forbidding my son from using the bathroom. I'm not forbidding, Richard. I'm just organizing the household schedule better. And what about eating when he's hungry? Asked Elizabeth. Sometimes when I come home from school hungry, I can't use the kitchen because Jessica is cooking for the baby or working on her laptop at the kitchen table, Tyler explained. And where do you eat? Asked Robert. Sometimes I take a snack to the garage, Richard grew more and more furious. "Jessica, how can you treat my son like this?" "Richard, you don't understand how hard it is to take care of a baby and still handle a teenager's needs. Tyler isn't a stranger. He's my son and should be treated as such." "But he's not my son," said Jessica, finally revealing her true feelings. The room fell silent. Richard looked at Jessica with complete disbelief. "What did you just say?" "Richard, I married you, not your son. I've always made that clear." "Jessica, when we got married, you said you adored Tyler and wanted to be like a mother to him. I tried, Richard, but after Sophia was born, I realized I don't have the patience to care for 2 children. Elizabeth stood up from her chair. 2 children. Tyler is 12. He doesn't need baby care, just affection and respect. "Mrs. Johnson, with all due respect, you don't live in our home. You don't know what daily life is like. I know it wasn't like this before you had your own child," Tyler said quietly. "What do you mean?" Richard asked. "Before Sophia was born, Jessica was nice to me. After she was born, everything changed. It was like I wasn't welcome in my own home anymore." Richard looked at Jessica, searching for an explanation. "Is this true?" "Richard, after Sophia was born, my priorities changed. It's natural that I'd care more about my biological daughter. But that doesn't mean you can mistreat my son." "I'm not mistreating anyone. I don't have the same patience I used to." Robert decided to speak up. "Sorry to interfere, but making a child sleep on a garage floor is mistreatment." "I agree," said Patricia. "Mr. Johnson, I must inform you that if this situation isn't resolved immediately, we'll have to involve Child Protective Services." Richard looked at Jessica with utter disappointment. "Jessica, do you realize what you've done? You made my son suffer in silence for months." "Richard, stop exaggerating. He's fine, isn't he?" "He's not fine. Look at him. He's lost weight. He's sick, in pain. That will pass." "It won't pass unless you stop mistreating him right now." "Richard, you're being dramatic. It's just an adjustment period." "Adjustment? 4 months of a child sleeping on the floor isn't adjustment, it's neglect." Elizabeth made a suggestion. "Richard, what if Tyler stays with me temporarily while you sort this out?" "No," Richard said firmly. "My son will keep living with me, but things are going to change drastically." He turned to Jessica. "You're giving Tyler his room back today." "Richard, what about my office?" "Find another space. Living room, guest room, wherever. But his room is his again." "And where will I put my things?" "That's your problem. You should have thought of that sooner." Jessica was clearly upset. "Richard, you're being unfair to me." "Unfair? You're the one being unfair to a 12-year-old. Tyler, who had been watching the argument, stepped closer to his father. "Dad, I don't want to cause trouble between you." Richard hugged his son. "Son, you're not causing trouble. You're just asking to be treated with dignity in your own home. I just want my room back and to sleep in a bed." "And you'll have that today," Richard said, staring firmly at Jessica. Jessica realized she had no more arguments. "Fine, Richard. I'll clean out his room today. Not just the room. You'll give him back his bathroom too and stop these ridiculous rules about mealtimes." "Richard, no Richard, Jessica. My son will be treated with respect in his own home or else..." "Or else what?" Richard hesitated, then said firmly, "Or else you'll have to choose between changing your attitude or leaving." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening. I'm making my priorities clear. My son comes first." Jessica fell silent for several minutes, clearly processing the ultimatum. "What if I can't adjust to having 2 kids at home?" "Then maybe you should have thought of that before marrying a man who already had a son." Elizabeth spoke up. "Jessica, Tyler isn't a difficult child. He's always been polite and affectionate. The problem isn't him, it's your attitude." "Mrs. Johnson, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. I understand that you thought after having your own child, you could marginalize Tyler. But that's not how a family works." Mrs. Patricia decided to wrap up the meeting. "Everyone, let's go over some practical points. Mr. Richard, can you confirm you'll resolve the situation today?" "Confirmed. My son will sleep in his own room starting tonight." "Perfect. And regarding the other points, bathroom, meal times, everything goes back to normal." Tyler has the same rights as any family member. Great. And Mrs. Elizabeth, can you resume your regular visits with your grandson? Of course, in fact, I want to help take care of Tyler whenever needed. And Robert, keep observing the boy and let us know if you notice any changes. You can count on me, Mrs. Patricia. When they left the school, Richard approached Robert. Robert, I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't noticed the situation... No need to thank me, Mr. Richard. Looking after children is all of our responsibility. You saved my son from a terrible situation. What matters is that everything will get better now. Elizabeth hugged Robert. Thank you for not giving up on my grandson. Mrs. Elizabeth, when we see a child suffering, we can't just stand by. Richard knelt in front of Tyler. Son, forgive me for not realizing what was happening. It's not your fault, Dad. You travel a lot for work. That's no excuse. I should have paid more attention. What matters is that you know now, and I promise nothing like this will ever happen again. That afternoon, Richard cancelled all his meetings and went home with Tyler. As soon as they arrived, they began removing Jessica's office things from the boy's room. Dad, can I get my things back from the attic? Of course, son. Let's go get everything. When they brought the boxes down from the attic, Richard was moved to see his son's belongings. Photos of his birth mother, childhood toys, books, clothes. Son, why didn't you tell me she had stored your things? She said it was better to keep them there to save space, and that when you got back from your trip, she'd talk to you about organizing everything. But that was months ago. Yeah, I kept asking for some photos of my mum, but she always said she was too busy. Richard found a picture frame with a photo of Tyler and his birth mother. Son, your mother would have wanted you to have these photos close by. I know, Dad. I really missed them. They spent the whole afternoon rearranging the room. Richard set up the bed that had been disassembled in storage, put the clothes back in the closet and organized the books on the shelf. There you go, son, your room is yours again. Tyler sat on the bed and for the first time in months, smiled genuinely. Dad, I can't believe I get to sleep in a bed tonight. And you'll sleep in a bed every night from now on. When Jessica got home from work, she found Richard and Tyler finishing up the room. You're already done? Yes, Richard said curtly. I moved your office things to the living room. You can find another place to work. Richard, we need to talk about this. There's nothing to discuss. Things will be as I said. Jessica realized Richard was serious. What if I can't adjust? Then you know the alternative. That night, for the first time in 4 months, Tyler slept in his own bed, in his own room. The next morning, when he got on the bus, Robert immediately noticed the difference. Good morning, Tyler. You look better today. Good morning, Mr. Robert. I slept in my bed last night. That's great, son. How was it? It was amazing. I'd forgotten how good it feels to sleep in a soft, warm bed. And your back pain? Much better. It still hurts a little, but it's nothing compared to before. Over the following weeks, Robert continued observing Tyler. The boy was clearly doing better, more energetic, more sociable, without constant pain. Jessica tried to adjust to the new situation, but it was evident she wasn't happy. In the first few weeks, she made passive-aggressive comments about the sacrifice she was making. Richard, you know I'm losing money by having to work in the living room, right? Jessica, you should be more concerned about being a better stepmother, not making more money. It's not just about money. It's about respect. Respect? You want to talk about respect after making my son sleep in a garage? The arguments between Richard and Jessica became more frequent. It was clear their marriage was going through a serious crisis. A month after the school meeting, Richard decided he needed to take more drastic action. He talked to Tyler about the situation. Son, I need to talk to you about Jessica. What is it, Dad? I don't think our marriage is working anymore. Is it because of me? No, son. It's because I married someone who doesn't respect my child, and that's unacceptable to me. Dad, I don't want you to separate because of me. Tyler, one day you'll understand that a real father always puts his children first. I can't live with someone who mistreats you. What about Sophia? Sophia will still be my daughter, and you'll always be her brother. But I have to protect you. The following week, Richard filed for divorce. Jessica tried to argue she could change, but Richard had already made his decision. Jessica, after everything that's happened, I can't trust you to treat my son right. Richard, I can do better. 4 months of a child sleeping on the floor isn't a mistake, it's a choice, and it shows who you really are. The divorce process was difficult, but Richard was determined to protect Tyler. During this time, Elizabeth Johnson became a constant presence in her grandson's life, helping Richard care for him. "Grandma, thank you for showing up when I needed you most." "My dear, a grandmother always knows when her grandson needs her. Even when you can't see him? A grandmother's heart feels it, my love." Robert continued monitoring Tyler's progress. The boy was much better. He'd gained weight, his back pain had completely disappeared, and he was far more engaged at school. "Mr. Thompson, I wanted to thank you for everything you did." "No need to thank me, Tyler. Any responsible adult would have done the same. But you were the only one who noticed something was wrong. Sometimes people just need someone who cares enough to pay attention. You saved my life." "No, son, you're strong. You would have gotten through this no matter what. I just helped speed it up." 6 months later, Richard and Tyler had moved to a smaller but cozier apartment. Elizabeth Johnson visited regularly, and the bond between father and son was stronger than ever. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son. Do you regret divorcing Jessica?" Richard thought for a few seconds before answering. "Son, I regret letting her treat you badly for so long. But I don't regret protecting you." "What about Sophia? Do you miss her?" "I do. She's my daughter. But I'm sure we'll have a good relationship in the future, and you'll always be her brother. Dad, thank you for choosing to protect me." "Son, it wasn't a choice. It was my duty. A father always protects his children." A year after the school meeting, Tyler was unrecognizable. He'd grown, gained weight, and was excelling in school. The traumatic experience had made him more empathetic and attentive to others suffering. Robert and Tyler developed a special friendship. The boy always made sure to greet the bus driver warmly and share updates about life at home. "Mr. Robert, do you want to see a picture of my new room?" "Of course, son." Tyler showed photos of a small but very tidy room with a comfortable bed, a desk for studying, and several family pictures on the walls. "It's beautiful, Tyler. You must be sleeping really well." "I do. And I never complain about anything anymore because I know it could be much worse. It's important to appreciate what we have, but it's also important to recognize when something isn't right. You taught me that. Before, I thought it was normal to be mistreated. It's never normal, son. Every child deserves to be treated with kindness and respect." Elizabeth Johnson also became a key figure in Tyler's life. She helped with homework, cooked for him and Richard, and was always there when they needed her. "Grandma, sometimes I think about what would have happened if Mr. Robert hadn't noticed my situation." "Don't dwell on that, my grandson. What matters is that everything worked out." "But what if he hadn't been a good person? What if he'd ignored it?" "But he didn't ignore it, and you know why? Because good people recognize when someone is hurting. I want to be like him when I grow up." "How so?" "I want to be someone who protects children who are suffering." "I'm sure you will be, sweetheart." At school, Tyler became an example of resilience. Mrs. Patricia often shared his story, without names, to raise awareness among other educators about the importance of paying attention to the signs children show. "Tyler, did you know your story has already helped other students?" "How so, Mrs. Patricia?" "Teachers from other schools, after hearing about your case, became more attentive to their students and identified similar situations." "That's great. No one should go through what I did." "Exactly. And it's all thanks to Robert, who never gave up on you. He's my hero." 2 years later, Tyler was in high school and had grown into a confident, well-adjusted teenager. Richard had found a better balance between work and personal life and spent much more time with his son. Jessica had moved to another city with Sophia, but maintained a cordial relationship with Richard for their daughter's sake. Tyler, who had matured a lot, held no grudges against his former stepmother. "Dad, Sometimes I think Jessica acted that way because she didn't know how to be a stepmom. Maybe, son, but that doesn't excuse what she did. I know, I just think maybe she wasn't a bad person, just lost. You have such a good heart, Tyler. I hope you never lose that ability to forgive. I learned from you and Grandma that holding on to anger only hurts us. Robert continued working as a school bus driver and had become even more attentive to the signs children displayed. His experience with Tyler taught him the importance of his role beyond just transporting students. One day, 3 years later, Robert received a special invitation. "Mr. Robert," said Tyler, now 15, "I'd like to invite you to my middle school graduation." "Of course, son, it'd be an honor to be there. You'll sit in the front row next to my dad and Grandma." "Tyler, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You're part of my family." On graduation day, Robert sat in the front row, moved as he watched Tyler receive his diploma. When the boy took the stage to deliver the class speech, he reserved a special moment to thank the bus driver. "I'd like to thank a very special person who taught me there's always someone willing to help when we're going through hard times. Mr. Robert, you saved my life." Robert couldn't hold back his tears. The entire audience turned to look at him, and he waved emotionally at Tyler. After the ceremony, the families gathered to celebrate. Richard approached Robert. "Robert, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for my son." "Richard, seeing Tyler happy and healthy is the best thanks I could ever receive. You gave me back my son. You two restored my faith in humanity." Elizabeth Johnson also came over. "Robert, you're an angel in our family's life." "Mrs. Elizabeth, we all have a responsibility to look out for one another." "Not everyone does that, dear. You're special." Tyler joined the group. "Mr. Robert, I have a surprise for you." "What surprise, son?" Tyler handed Robert an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dear Mr. Robert, I'll never be able to thank you enough for everything you've done for me. You taught me that there's kindness in the world, that there are people willing to help without expecting anything in return, and that we should never give up fighting for what's right. Because of you, I now have a united family. A father who loves me, a grandmother who cares for me, and most importantly, I've learned to value myself. When I grow up, I want to be like you, someone who protects children and never turns a blind eye to others' suffering. You saved my life, but more than that, you taught me how to live. With all my love and gratitude, Tyler." Robert finished reading the letter with tears in his eyes. "Tyler, you're a very special young man. I learned from the best teacher, Mr. Robert." At that moment, looking at Tyler surrounded by people who loved him, Robert knew he'd done the right thing. Sometimes, all a child needs is an adult who cares enough to pay attention and take action. Tyler's story spread through the Portland community as an example of how one person's attention and care can completely transform a child's life. Robert became something of a local hero, though he always insisted he'd only done what any decent person should. Years later, Tyler graduated with a degree in psychology, specializing in child psychology. His goal was to help children who'd been through situations like his, and whenever he shared his story with his young patients, he mentioned the bus driver who never gave up on him. "When we think we're alone, someone always comes along to remind us there's goodness in the world," Tyler would tell his little patients. Sometimes that person is a teacher, sometimes a neighbor, and sometimes it's a bus driver who cares enough to pay attention. And so, the story of Robert and Tyler continued to inspire people long after those difficult 4 months were behind them, proving that a single act of kindness can change a life forever. The end. What did you think of this touching story? Tell us in the comments if you know someone who's been through a similar situation, or if you've ever witnessed injustice toward a child. Your opinion means a lot to us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.